do this. Oh. Start slideshow. There we go. Sorry. So can everyone see that? And can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
Good stuff. So my name is Declan Meehan. As I said earlier, I'm manager of Milford and District Resource Centre. So we are, I suppose, physically a very small resource centre that is based in Milford, up in the north of the county. Our remit, which I've put there, I guess, from our constitution, our primary object, is to operate the space as an accessible community resource facility and to operate it as a base for urban and rural regeneration initiatives in the town of Milford and the wider electoral district, and a centre to advance community development initiatives that enhance community life and reverse the economic, physical and social decline of the area for the benefit of the whole community. So there's a lot of work within that. It's obviously very aspirational and an ambitious kind of an object for the organisation. But we don't just cover the town of Milford. We work across the Fannet and Roskill peninsulas as well in terms of supporting groups and trying to identify funding. And we would work closely and in partnership with MIVA Family Resource Centre a lot. Obviously, Leona is here today. We have a joint project that we're currently undertaking, which I'll talk a little bit about later. But also, as well as providing community supports and operating a social enterprise, we are very focused on rural regeneration as well, and anything that kind of, I suppose, contributes to that in a meaningful way that's a benefit to everyone in the community. And I'll talk a little bit more on that. So you can see there picture of, I suppose, our facilities, which is at the top of the town on Market Square in Milford. Blue building there is our main office building. We have very little community space as a resource centre. We have our charity shop there in the middle, Rags to Riches, the red building, which contributes obviously into our social enterprise model. And then at the back, we have our community health and wellbeing garden, which a lot of community groups use during the finer weather. The students from the local schools also use it, and it's a very small space, but a useful space nonetheless at the back of the property as well. So that's where we're located at the top of the town. So very brightly coloured, so you can't miss us, and very much main building painted in line with our own branding, just so that we really stand out for people passing through the town. So much like many of the organisations here, though not all, were primarily funded by under the Community Services Programme by Pobble with funding from the Department of Rural and Community Development. We recently got confirmation of our 5-year contract at an increased rate per member of staff. So we're absolutely delighted with that, and it'll make a really big difference to how we operate. And it'll mean that more of our traded income can go into providing services and facilities for people in the community. We have 7 members of staff, 4 full-time and 3 part-time. As part of that, we have myself, the manager. We have a full-time administrator, a full-time receptionist slash office manager, if you like. We then have a full-time youth project coordinator. We have a part-time social prescriber, a part-time marketing officer, and a part-time bookkeeper as well. Bookkeeping makes up a large part of our traded income. It's one of the services that we provide for people in the community, businesses, community groups, etc. We also receive funding from the HSE, which covers the funding for our social prescriber. I'll touch more on that later and chat about social prescribing. I know some of the organisations here will have experience of that as well. And then the funding for our youth project coordinator comes from the International Fund for Ireland. I know that there's a few organisations as part of the Social Enterprise Network Donegal that have also received funding under that particular from that particular funder to progress and to develop personal youth development programs as well. We have 7 volunteers at the minute, and they mainly work in the charity shop. And our office is open 9 to 5, Monday to Thursday, 9 to 2:30 on a Friday. And then our charity shop operates from 10 to 4, Monday to Friday. So just to kind of give an overview then of the community services that we offer, and again, it's not just in Milford town, but across Fannin, Roskill, Ramelton and Rathmullen. In terms of what we have within in-house, I guess the main thing is that we have an open, accessible and affordable resource centre for basic services. So like printing, photocopying, scanning, support with tech, anything like that. We operate a digital device library for people. So if they need to borrow a laptop or a tablet, then they can do so. And particularly that might be tied in with some of the online courses that we encourage some of our service users to avail of, either through community health supports, mental health supports, or through training and education as well. We've room rental. Again, as I said at the start, we're a very small resource centre. We're based in a 160-year-old townhouse in Milford, it's dating from the 1860s. We've done a lot of work over the past few years to kind of bring it up to a modern spec, as a lot of work, or no work, had been done on it rather, for the preceding maybe 15 years since MDRC had moved in here. So we have one boardroom that we get some room rental from. We run some ETB classes, ETB funded classes in there, and some of the local community groups and charities like St. Vincent de Paul would use that too. We have a small space again that can double as a hot desking and remote workspace. I know that there are some people here who offer that as part of what they have within their social enterprises. Ours is in a much smaller scale. So during the summer months in particular, we might have 2, 3 or 4 people maximum kind of using the space for maybe a week at a time. So it's nice to be able to offer it. We're not able to offer it on a scale that really generates a huge amount of income for us. As I mentioned, we have a social prescriber. Our social prescriber is Leslie Newbury. Some of you will know Leslie, and she covers Milford, Fannin, Roskill, Melton, and Rathmullen. So again, kind of everything that we offer within the resource centre here covers that general Milford electoral area. So it's the kind of area within the Letterkenny Municipal District that isn't Letterkenny, essentially. The social prescribing programme is part of the wider Donegal social prescribing programme as it was originally, and now is partially funded under Slanchicare within the HSE, and then other funding that's cobbled together to make up. So we have 14 hours a week of social prescribing, very diverse client base. And for people that don't fully understand what social prescribing is, it's essentially a non-clinical intervention that's meant to complement any sort of healthcare that people are receiving. And the primary purpose of it is to combat social isolation in our community. So people who are socially isolated just because they are, or because they're elderly, or because they're living with a long-term illness, or maybe because they're living with a disability, or poor mental health. Social prescribing is an excellent service that steps in, that tries to combat specifically the social isolation that those people might be feeling, and to kind of point them to other supports that exist outside clinical intervention and clinical treatment. So it's a very successful project. It was piloted in Donegal. Our social prescriber, Leslie, is one of the longest ones working in the area, and the work that she does with people is absolutely fantastic. And you're working with around nearly 80 people, in and around 80 people a year of new referrals, and also working then with obviously existing client base as well, which is a lot of work to do in a 14-hour week. But we're delighted to have whatever hours we have to be able to do it in the local area. We also have the My Future project. So the MYE stands for Mulroy Youth Engagement. And this is a personal youth development programme. As I said, it's funded by the International Fund for Ireland. This is specifically targeted at 16 to 25-year-olds who are not in education, training or employment, or who are at risk of dropping out of education and training. And it's a very targeted one-to-one personal youth development programme that tries to meet young people where they're at, and to tailor make specific personalised pathways and plans in order to get them into training, education or employment that suits them and that meets their own needs and interests. So the target that we have from IFI the target number of participants in a year is actually quite small on that. And we're required to work with maybe 12 people over the course of the year. This project started in August, and we've got 8 people fully engaged on pathways with our youth project coordinator, Marie Tonra. So it's going very well. There's a real need for it in the local community, and it's fantastic to be able to have it embedded within the resource centre here. And we work quite closely with the 2 secondary schools in Milford, which cover the whole catchment area as well, Mulroy College and Redwood Community School. Some of the other things that we help with some of the smaller groups is grant application support, strategic planning for some of the community groups and sports clubs, annual report training for community groups. And those 3 things in particular kind of go hand in hand. We work with some of the other community centres around the area that aren't funded under CSP, so are completely voluntary led, and provide them with as much support as we can. And signpost them into other organisations such as the LDC for support that might be beyond our capacity or beyond our remit. And that actually works really well because it means we're building relationships with other stakeholders and other community groups in the area, which often results in partnerships and greater cooperation, which means that we're ensuring that our services are available across the entire area, again, as opposed to just being restricted to Milford Town or the immediate hinterland. The new community support is obviously, for us, is a very recent thing. We're coming up to the 1-year anniversary of the first Ukrainian refugees arriving in Milford, which was Easter week last year. And that has taken up a huge amount of our work over the past 12 months. And we've been assisted massively by Donegal Local Development Company in that. But it's a pleasure to be able to do that work, and it's been fantastic to work on some of the integration initiatives. One of the things that we did last summer was to run a summer camp for Donegal kids and Ukrainian kids that was massively subsidised by DLDC. We were able to also provide transport over to Rye Community Centre for everyone that was attending that, and to offer it for €15 a head, which not even just taking Ukrainians into consideration, but taking into consideration a lot of families. It was the first summer camp that a lot of local families had been to because of the often prohibitive cost of summer camps offered by some of the sports clubs, for example, or other companies that are out there. So that's just kind of a flavour of some of the stuff that we do on a community basis. Just to kind of touch then on the actual social enterprise, Milford District Resource Centre operates our own social enterprise, and we call it Community Business Services. So what we do is we're offering low-cost services to businesses, community organisations, partnerships and farmers, and also individuals as well, which is a new kind of area that we've gotten into with personal tax returns and tax rebates. But the bulk of our work under our social enterprise would be our bookkeeping, accounts, payroll and tax returns that we do for primarily sole traders, but also small businesses, and also for other community organisations really across Donegal. So we have clients as far away as Ironmore and Donegal Town and up into Inishowen from different community organisations. And we have businesses and sole traders from all over Ireland. I guess for anyone that isn't a company limited by guarantee, they don't need to use an accountant. And so they only need to use a bookkeeper or an accounting technician, which is what we have in-house as part of our members of staff, part of our staff team, which means that we can offer very, very competitive rates to organisations and businesses and make them savings while we're making money for the social enterprise here. So it's a win-win situation whenever we get a new client, because the client is 99% of the time saving money on their existing accounting bills, because a lot of people go to an accountant when they don't need to. And also we're making money then that can go back into the community. Part of what we offer as well is graphic design in-house for community groups, for businesses, for whomever. And we also offer printing, photocopying, scanning, all of that kind of basic stuff. One of our clients is one of the trade unions, and we do a newsletter printout for them. We also do mail notifications for their general meetings and annual general meetings. So those kind of pieces of work that we have as well. So all our clients, as I say, are saving money by coming to us because we're not charging a full commercial price. But all the money that we do take in then is going back into the community, like all of your social enterprises. So that's just a little more information. This is kind of a campaign that we ran on social media recently to highlight and educate people on what exactly a social enterprise is. Obviously, all of us here in this network know what it is because we're living it every day. And I think that some organizations that we work with don't even realize that they're a social enterprise. So it's kind of targeted towards those organizations that we work with, community organizations, but also the general public, to educate them that, you know, if you bring your business to us, then we'll be plowing the money back into the community, and isn't that better for everyone? So saves them money and supports the community, as you can see there. So when I started this job back in 2019, what I was keen to do was to kind of ring fence money for the community from the money that was coming in through the social enterprise. So we set up the Milford Development Fund, which ring fenced all the money from the charity shop that we have, and then also most of the profits that we have that we didn't need for overheads, coming from our social enterprise, particularly community business services. And what we've done then is we've allocated that out in grant rounds to community groups, to local initiatives, community development projects, whatever it is. So some of the examples there that we would have had donated to previously, the Swelling Mulroy MS support group, just this time last year, we made a donation of €1,200 so that they could get their members into their support group, which takes place in Milford. But the group itself, the members come from all over the area, but accessible and mobility friendly transport is very limited in this area. And I'll touch on that again a bit later from one of the other projects that we're working on with me, the Family Resource Centre. But then you can see some of the other ones, €500 to Rathmullen the Way Forward, which is a local community development organisation in Rathmullen, and then also supporting initiatives like the getting people, sponsoring a bus to get people to the protests in Dublin back in 2021, because so many people in our community are affected by defective blocks. So that's just an example of the sort of groups that we support. There's about, I think it's just over 16,000 that we've given out over the past 3 years to local groups and different initiatives. And it really kind of is a very visible and tangible benefit to the community from our social enterprise. So obviously, you know, there's some money that we need to keep for ourselves, for our overheads and for services and for putting on different community initiatives. But when there's a significant amount also going out each year to groups, and as we all know, even small grants to groups that, you know, are running on a voluntary basis have high impact. So it has created, I suppose, a lot of goodwill towards our organisation, and has helped us sign up clients as well, when there's a very visible benefit to the social enterprise. So just the charity shop then, to give an overview of it, it's right next door to the Resource Centre, part of the same complex, if you like to call something so small a complex. But anyway, we've 7 volunteers working in there, and we also have 2 participants from Donegal Horizons who work with us. So it's great to be able to provide placement opportunities for organisations like Donegal Horizons. Just to give an example of the sort of revenue that we brought in, last year was kind of a record year for us, where we brought in just over €9,000. It's a very, very small charity shop. So for €9,000 to come through that over the course of a year is a big deal for us. It's the size of probably maybe a regular sized office in most buildings. But you know, it's great to have that money coming in that we're able to put out then onto different initiatives in the community. So just some stuff, I suppose, on stuff that we're working on. As I've said, the space that we're in is extremely small, and we're very limited in the sort of things that we can facilitate for the community. We don't have space for classes or activities bigger than 10 people sitting in a room. So that really does limit what we can kind of provide. Milford in general is very badly off for community infrastructure. There isn't an open, accessible community centre. Our closest community centres would be in Cranford, Rye or Melton. So a lot of people have to go there in order to use them, but they're often at capacity themselves. So last year we approached one of the churches in Milford, the Reformed Presbyterian Church, and they had, I suppose, vacated this building that you see on your screens back in 2016 because it was in such a bad state of repair. And they basically made a cost-benefit analysis that it would not benefit them to spend the money that needed to be spent on this building to stay there, because they're a very small congregation of maybe 20 people. So they decided to move out to a modern retail unit in the retail park in Milford, and they had left this empty for the 6 years in between. So we approached them with a proposal to ask, would they consider gifting it to the community via our organisation, Milford District Resource Centre, so that we could save the building rather than let it go to rack and ruin, and also rather than let it go to, I suppose, a commercial developer that might do something else with it, and that it would then fill that gap of community space, much needed community space in Milford. So with a bit of to and froing, a bit of negotiation, but on the whole, very positive experience, the church agreed to gift it to the community. And the legal kind of signing over, the transfer of deeds, was concluded in late November last year. So we're now the very proud owners of nearly a 200-year-old church building, which is right in the middle of the town. It's just down the Kilmacrennan Road for anyone who knows Milford, beside Divers Hardware. So it's very central, walking distance from the town. And our plans now are, we've put in for a Heritage Council grant for a conservation plan and a feasibility study to have that funded and to carry that out. We've engaged the services of Daedalus architects from Inishowen to oversee any of the work that we're doing, and we're engaged with the council and the heritage officer to ensure that whatever plans we do have to make this a fit for purpose community hub, that the council won't be breathing down our necks on it. And again, part of the ethos is that we wanted to preserve this building because it's a culturally and historically significant building within the town. It belongs to a congregation that has been here since the 1690s in Milford. That's a dwindling congregation. So we want to ensure that, you know, that sort of story and that heritage of that community is preserved by preserving this building, but bringing it into a new use that's accessible to everyone in the community. So you can see there on your screen on the left, that's actually the main sort of church part of the meeting house, and that's the largest space. Then the outside, you can see in the next photo, there's a smaller activity hall there in the third photo, which is ideal. So it's a really, really good building that we'll hopefully be able to develop later this year. The plan, as I say, is to get a feasibility study and conservation plan done, and then to hopefully go for leader funding towards the end of this year, to be able to bring it up to spec. There's a lot wrong with it. It needs a new roof, a new floor, and new heating system, all of that. But again, would be of huge benefit to the community if it was turned into what we want it to be, which is essentially a community centre. And the last photo there is just representatives of the church handing over the keys to us just before Christmas last year. One of the other things that we're engaged in, and one of, I suppose, our remit is around rural regeneration. So on the left, you'll just see a photo of a derelict house on the main street in Milford, before and after shot. Last year, we lobbied to get streetscape enhancement initiative for Milford, which was worth about 60,000. And what that meant was that owners of buildings and businesses on the main street were subsidised up to the tune of about 80%, 70 or 80%, just depending, to paint their buildings, freshen them up, get new shop fronts and new lighting, new signage. And then for houses that were vacant or the owner couldn't be contacted, Tidy Towns were given the go-ahead by the council to take that over. We covered the cost for it and then claimed it back from the streetscape enhancement. So we had 29 buildings on Main Street, Milford done, and it has massively improved the look of an otherwise kind of beleaguered looking Main Street, which is, of course, a problem that's faced by villages and towns all over Ireland. So it was fantastic to get that sort of funding to be able to tidy the town up a bit. That's a short-term solution to obviously a much more long-term problem, but it's great to be able to kind of just chip away at those sort of things in the meantime. The middle picture there is an illustration that we've been using to highlight or to make people aware of our mobility bus. So ourselves and Miva Family Resource Centre and the Swilly Milroy Community Health Forum put in a joint application last year under CLAR funding from the Department of Rural and Community Development for a vehicle, a community vehicle, and we were successful in securing €62,000 towards a mobility bus. Transport for people with mobility issues or additional needs is just a huge challenge in this area. Even for private providers, there are only 2 vehicles that are fit to take 1 person at a time. So we wanted to explore options of a capital investment, which would be a shared community vehicle that everyone could use in order to get people with mobility issues from A to B, whether that's for appointments, to attend social groups, to attend some of the support groups that go on, different things in the Family Resource Centre or up here in Milford. Or just simply to get them from A to B for whatever it is that they need. And again, it's part of that overarching thing to tackle social isolation in the community. So we're currently just finishing fundraising for our match funding, and then we'll be hoping to place an order for the bus in the coming months, and then hopefully to have it on the road by the end of this year. So that's an exciting project for us as well. The last piece there is Milford was selected back in December 2021, the town of Milford, for a town centre first plan, which is a new initiative under the Department of Rural and Community Development. We had lobbied for Milford to be selected, and basically it is for funding of €100,000 for a master plan addressing a number of the issues or developing some vacant land across the whole of Milford that will sort of be a template for attracting investment and funding into Milford for the next 10 to 20 years. So we're very happy to have gotten that funding and to be selected as the town in Donegal to receive that master plan, and that process is currently underway. The proposal that we're working on as part of that is to develop vacant land in the heart of the town, which is about 3 acres, and to develop it into a town park, a modern, high-spec, all singing, all dancing town park that everyone in the town can get benefit out of, young and old, of all abilities. Because I think over the course of COVID, but also over the course of the arrival of, we have 220 Ukrainian refugees in Milford now, and between COVID and that, it has really highlighted the fact that we lack public space, both indoor community space, which is why we're going down the route of securing that church building, but also public realm and outdoor communal space that doesn't belong to any one sports club. And that's why we're pushing this and working on this proposal for a town park. So that's what we're currently engaging. We've a busy year ahead as ever. But yeah, that's everything from me. So if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Thanks very much, Declan. Thank you for your presentation. It's great to see the diverse range of services that you have and going on in Milford there.